What's going on, guys? My name is Matt and I am back with a new PC build. This time the price point is $1,500. This is a beast of a gaming PC, but I was honestly hesitant to make this video. This is because all these parts are available, with the big exception being the graphics card. With that being said, there is a lot of cool tech and components in this build that I think you'll find interesting and maybe help inspire your next build. Like I said, this system is very powerful, being able to max out pretty much any game at 1440p, but I also paid a good amount of attention to the aesthetics of this build, with the star of the show being the new O11 Dynamic Mini, an absolutely amazing case that I'll be talking about a lot more later in the video. I'm happy to say this video is in partnership with Micro Center, who is your one-stop shop for all of your work, learn, and game from home needs. They offer by far the best in-person experience for buying PC parts. They have a PC builder that allows you to part out a system using items that are in stock and ready to be purchased. What's even cooler is by grabbing the coupon linked in the description and heading in store, you'll get a free 32GB flash drive and 32GB SD card absolutely free. And to learn more, head down to the description. Also, you can go down there to find a Micro Center near you and to check out the PC builder. Thanks again to Micro Center for helping out with this video, and now let's get back to the build. Let's start things off with the CPU. Things were looking bleak for a while, but slowly current gen CPUs are becoming more and more available. I went with what is probably the best gaming CPU on the market right now, which is the Ryzen 5 5600X. I pre-ordered this guy and had to wait a month and a half to get it, but what's awesome is the 5600X is now readily available for its MSRP, which is a good sign. This is 6-core 12-thread CPU on AMD's latest Zen 3 architecture. The step up from the 3000 to 5000 series brought a very significant improvement in performance with a substantial boost to IPC. The 5600X comes with a base and boost clock of 3.7 and 4.6 GHz respectively, and it's unlocked, meaning it can be overclocked for even more performance. Also, the 5600X is the only 5000 series CPU so far to come with a stock cooler, but I opted not to go with it, as aftermarket cooling made the most sense in this build. To cool the CPU, I didn't go very high end, but I got a heatsink that will keep the 5600 cool, quiet, and allow for some overclocking headroom. What I got is this Deepcool GAMX GT ARGB cooler. This is a tower style cooler with multiple direct contact heat pipes and a pretty substantial aluminum fin array. Also, like the name implies, this does have RGB integrated into both the fan and the heatsink shroud, which looks really nice in my opinion. For around $40, this cooler offers a lot of value per dollar, and we'll be discussing temps and overclocking during the benchmark section of this video, so make sure to stick around for that. In terms of the motherboard, I went for something that's a little pricier than I usually go for at around $180, but it's a very highly rated board. What I picked was the B550 Mag Tomahawk. This motherboard from MSI packs a bunch of features, like multiple M.2 slots, a Type-C front panel port, decent back panel I/O, and great VRM setup for overclocking even higher end Ryzen 5000 series CPUs. I also think the neutral color scheme on this board looks nice and fits in pretty well with this build. This board uses the B550 chipset, which basically provides all the features of X570 minus the support for SLI GPUs, which isn't really a thing in 2021, especially in the context of gaming. Next, let's talk about RAM. Because this is meant for gaming, going for 16GB should be enough for any modern game. What I went with is the 16GB kit of Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro SL RAM. This is a dual channel kit running at 3600MHz, which is the sweet spot of price to performance when being paired with a Ryzen CPU. This new SL variant of Corsair RAM offers a lot of performance and some of the best lighting on RAM I've ever seen. For around $100, it is on the pricier side of a 16GB kit, but again, you're paying a premium because of how nice this looks. This kit ran no problem at its rated speeds and fit in very nicely into the build. In terms of storage, I decided to just go with a single 1TB NVMe drive, which is enough for the OS, applications, and a decent sized games library. Just like with the RAM, I went for another Corsair product. Because the motherboard I'm using has the B550 chipset, it means it supports the ultra-fast PCIe Gen 4 drives. This Corsair MP600 core is one of Corsair's newest Gen 4 drives, and at around $150, it's actually a decent deal for the performance it offers. I'll be talking about performance more later, but in terms of sequential speeds, this drive is rated to go as high as 4.7 GB per second in sequential reads. Because this is such a powerful drive, Corsair included a heatsink pre-applied to ensure adequate temps, which can prevent thermal throttling. The MSI board in this build did come with basic M.2 heatsinks, but I trust the pre-applied one much more because it does have some basic fins and was engineered specifically to work with this drive. One other nice thing is there's actually a second M.2 slot open, meaning upgrading the system system with even more ultra-fast NVMe storage is as simple as popping in another drive. Moving on to the graphics card, this is the part that really is the hardest to get a hold of. This is an RTX 3060 Ti and is the Gigabyte Eagle model, which looks pretty nice and performs really well. This is a relatively basic dual fan design, and the PCB for this card is actually a fair bit shorter than the length of the card itself. It is 8GB of video memory, which is more than enough for modern gaming, even at higher resolutions, and again, temps and performance for this guy will all be in the benchmark section of the video. When this card is in stock, it goes for between $450 and $500 on sites like Newegg, but again, it's pretty hard to find one in stock. Now let's talk about the case. This build is in the Lee & Lee O11 Dynamic Mini, which is the new smaller version of the O11 Dynamic. It's pretty cool in the fact it's modular and can be adapted to fit ATX, micro ATX, and even ITX motherboards. Changing configurations is pretty simple and you get all the different parts and brackets in the box. I get that mini is a relative term, but I'm not sure mini is the first thing that came to mind when getting my hands on this case. All the panels are toolless and come off very easily. The top first like this, then the two glass panels like this. Being able to remove all these panels makes building in the case a breeze. Beyond the back panel is actually a separate chamber that houses the power supply and SATA drives. There's also a good amount of space back here for cable management, which this panel hides a lot of. One other nice thing is the fact there are dust filters pretty much everywhere, one on the top, one on the bottom, and two on the back panel for the case fans and the power supply. Speaking of the power supply, one major downside of this case is the fact you have to use an SFX power supply, which are generally more expensive than their ATX counterparts. The one I went with is the FSP Dagger Pro. This unit is 80 plus gold rated and has 650 watts of power output. For a build like this, 650 watts is way more than enough, and for super power hungry builds, FSP actually makes a 750 watt version of this. It's always mind blowing to me holding an SFX power supply in my hand just because of how compact it is. I mean, it makes normal power supplies seem gigantic in comparison. Now, this power supply is fully modular and the cables are really nice, but to tie things together with the theme a little bit better, I went ahead and got some cable extensions. These are white cable extensions, which I got for around $20 from Amazon. I'll have the link to this kit along with all the other links to these parts in the description. These were actually really nice cables, especially considering the $20 price tag. The last thing I want to talk about in regards to the case is the case fans. The O11 Dynamic Mini doesn't come with any fans pre-installed, which allows them to keep the cost down and allow you to pick out your own. What I ended up getting is this 5-pack of Asia Horse ARGB fans for around $60 on Amazon. I've never used these fans before, so I thought it would be interesting to try them out. These are 120mm white fans that come with an RGB controller for up to 10 fans total. Booting the system up for the first time, I was honestly mind blown at how nice these fans looked. They were much brighter than I expected and they were relatively quiet, even giving you the option to manually control their speed on the fly with the remote if you want. There are tons of color options and modes to play with that should suit most everyone. The configuration I went with is 2 intake fans at the bottom, 2 exhaust fans vertically at the front, and 1 exhaust fan at the back. In an ideal world, I would have got another 5-pack, which would have allowed me to occupy all of the fan spots and allowed me to replace the fan on the CPU cooler to make things look a little more cohesive. With that being said, I think these fans and this configuration looks great. If you would have configured the fans differently, then let me know what you would have done in the comments below. All in all, for $1,500, this is a really great looking and performing system. With that pricing, assuming you can get a 3060 Ti for MSRP, which I understand is next to impossible right now. So now that you've seen each of the parts and understand why I picked them, I'm now going to show you how the system performs in a bunch of games. I tested all these games at 1440p because I believe that's the best middle ground between high refresh rates and visual fidelity for this system. I tested a wide range of games, but if there's one you'd like to see me test in the future, let me know in the comments below. Let's start things out with Fortnite at 1440p Pro settings, which is max view distance, high textures, and pretty much everything else set to low. Using these settings, the system put out an average of 300 FPS in a Team Rumbles match, which is pretty impressive. There were some frame dips and fluctuations, but overall it was very smooth and enjoyable. Moving on to COD Warzone, I tested this at 1440p very high settings with RTX turned off. Doing this resulted in an overall average of 151 FPS. This is great to see that a game like Warzone can play at these settings and resolution with an average of over 144 FPS, which I think would be perfect if you paired this system with a 1440p 144Hz display, which is my preferred gaming monitor. Next up is Rust, which I tested at 1440p with what I would consider high settings. Just running around on a random server gave me an overall average of right around 140 FPS. This was very smooth and there weren't any major frame dips or stutters. Next up is a hard to run AAA title, which is Borderlands 3. I tested this using the built-in benchmark at 1440p high settings. Doing this resulted in an average of 89 FPS. This definitely isn't as high as the other games, but is good proof that you can max out pretty much any game on this system at 1440p with a 60 plus FPS average. Now let's talk about Apex Legends. I tested this game at 1440p with pretty much everything maxed out. I don't know how to unlock the frame rate on this game, but with that being said, it ran at the capped 144 FPS pretty much the entire time, with some occasional dips. Overall, the experience was great in this game and was very enjoyable. Next is Rainbow Six Siege. I tested this game using the built-in benchmark at 1440p, very high settings. Now Rainbow Six is very easy to run, so the 315 FPS average it received was to be expected and shows the system is pretty overkill for a game like Rainbow Six. Overall performance on the system is great. Yes, the graphics card isn't available right now, but hopefully in a month or two the part shortage will get figured out. Obviously there are an infinite number of ways I could have went with this build, so if you would have done something different or picked different parts, then let me know in the comments. So yeah guys, I think this wraps this video up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And as always, this is Matt from Tech by Matt, signing out.